Welcome back to the Turbo Branding Show. I'm your host, 𝐄𝐩𝐢𝐬𝐤, and I'm here to help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. If you're a small business owner who's ever felt invisible in a crowded market or wondered how to differentiate your business from so many others, you're going to want to stick around for this episode. My guest today is Megan Schwan, CEO of Sidekick Accounting, a virtual accounting firm serving small businesses with a special focus on women and minority-owned businesses. What I love about Megan is that she didn't build a forgettable Me Too accounting firm. She intentionally built a brand from day one, a brand that stands out from the competition with a superhero theme, Avengers hold music, bedazzled logo shirts, and a set of core values that runs through every hire, every service, and every client interaction. I also love that she's an accountant who gets branding. She understands that your numbers and your brand aren't separate conversations. They're the same one. Because if you can't communicate who you are and what makes you different, it shows up on your bottom line. So we're going to talk about how she turned a painful personal moment into a powerful brand identity, how she keeps culture and consistency alive with a fully virtual team, and what she's learned about standing out in an industry known for being creative. Megan, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, Sue. I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah, awesome. You have built such a unique brand, and I can't wait to share that with our listeners. But first, I'm going to throw out a little bit more background about you.
Sure.
Megan Schwan is the CEO and founder of Sidekick Accounting Services, as I mentioned. She's also a single mom of four and a fierce advocate for small business success. As an accountant, certified profit first professional, speaker, coach, and author, she's on a mission to flip the script of the 80% failure rate by helping everyday entrepreneurs build profitable, sustainable businesses. An awesome goal that I highly, highly endorse. But through education, strategic support, and a whole lot of real world experience, Megan and her team empower business owners to scale with confidence by the numbers. Awesome. Did I skip anything?
Thank you. No, that was great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Perfect. So now I'm going to let you talk about your professional journey and how you wanted to be an out-of-the-box accountant, as you mentioned to me when we talked last time. Give us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, so I started in accounting when I was 15, actually. I had an internship that I went into, and a teacher who was my accounting 101 teacher that just kind of mentioned or came up to me, said I had a knack for it to think about making it a career. And so I think that was kind of what paved the path for me to get into the industry. And so you always hear, especially a lot during that time, I think things have shifted a little bit more in our favor as women. But back then, people would think accountants, dry, old white guy, kind of in the background. And I was just like, I don't want to be that person. So when I started my accounting firm, I decided that I really wanted to stand out. And so, like you mentioned, one of the big things that I did was got branded shirts that were bedazzled. So I'd wear those to networking meetings, kind of became known as like the accountant with a bedazzled shirt, and I also wanted to really be able to meet people where they were at, because especially as I was starting to grow and have more conversations with people, I was realizing that a lot of times there was that frustration where people would have an accountant or wouldn't want to talk to their accountant because they just felt like they didn't understand them, right? Or they couldn't talk to them, they couldn't ask questions. And even with that, like one of the big things that we do at our firm is I don't charge by the hour, I don't charge by the phone call. We have packaged rates, but I always tell my clients and prospects, like, I don't want you to not ask a question. Like,
Yeah.
so I want you to not feel like, oh, nickel and dime what questions to ask, because that just puts business owners in a bad position if they feel like they can't ask these questions that are really important to helping them be successful. So that was kind of the thought process behind it, was like just being able to stand out in that, be more approachable, to really truly help people in their journey of business growth and success, because it's important to have a partner on your team, and at your side, that was partially why we're Sidekick Accounting, because we want to do that and be that to our clients on their business journey. If you have somebody that you have that with, you'll be a lot more successful than trying to, do what you do it on your own. You
Yeah.
don't know what you don't know, so making those mistakes, if you have somebody like that, then you can avoid those mistakes a lot easier and
Yeah.
get to success a lot quicker. So that was a big piece of that.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. And I love, well, let's talk a little bit about, because I love the name Sidekick
Mhm.
Accounting, because obviously, as you just explained, it's let us
Yeah,
walk with you. We're here to partner you,
right.
got your back kind of a thing. So I love
Mhm.
that whole concept. But you also then, like, really kind of in a fun way, expanded the Sidekick theme.
Yeah.
So it's not just the bedazzled shirts that you have that
Right.
help you stand out. Talk a little bit more about how you kind of extended that Sidekick theme within the business.
Yeah, yeah. And the bedazzled shirt started when I was McCray Accounting. This was the name of my firm before because I was married. But then I got divorced, so I was like, well, I needed to change the name of the business. So I had to, kind of put more thought into it. And for me, like names just in general are important. My kids all have very specific intentional names with meanings. And so I kind of approached that with my business too, as I wanted it to have kind of like the embodiment of what we were trying to accomplish. And so I did a lot of, kind of research. I had people give me suggestions of like, pick a word and then look at that word in foreign languages, kind of thing to like find a name.
Yep.
Did some of that. And I don't know, I had just come across Sidekick somewhere as I was like looking for these different words and synonyms, to different things.
Yeah.
And for me, it really like resonated. I was like, that's it, because not only does it embody what we're trying to do as an accounting firm with our clients, but me and my kids are actually really big Marvel fans. And so, like, it's a homage to my kids as well. So, for me, it has a lot of meaning and a lot of emphasis. And then for my team, we've really taken that and kind of ran with it as well. On a team level, like, we do team ups in the morning, which is like the superhero term for like those team ups, like when you get together, kind of thing. And then we do our profit analysis for our clients. We call it that, so we just kind of lean into the superhero theme, which I think really embodies who we are too, just like our values. One of our values is sparkle and fun is what we call it, because we want to bring, fun into our workspace as well
Yeah.
as all of the important other things like communication and accuracy and all of those kind of stuff as well. So it really helps us to kind of build that into our culture as well, because we have this like fun kind of theme that we use, seriousness of what services we provide as well. And it really is a great balance.
Yeah. No, I love what you talk about because it's, two things is the first, I want to talk about naming and then maybe employer branding, right? So naming is tough, as you mentioned,
It is.
right? And, I know for a lot of small businesses, it's hard to come up with a name because even if you wanted something super creative and clever and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, it's hard to get anything trademarked that isn't
Yeah.
already used in something else, right? So a lot of times it's really easy to default to just use your name. And there's nothing wrong with that because a lot of times with, as a
Yeah.
startup and a small business, you are the brand, you are the
Yeah.
firm, so the name makes sense. But then life happens, like you said, and there comes a point where there is a slight risk to using your name in that something might happen and you want to change it. Or I had a client a long time ago who had built this wonderful business using his name in the healthcare information industry. And when he sold his business, he lost the rights to his name because it was so well known. That's what the
Yeah.
buyer wanted was to keep
Right.
his name. So when he started a second business further on, he could not use his name anymore.
I
And
don't know.
this
Mhm.
chaos. But also I want to touch on the employer branding piece because by living your core values and one of them being fun and things like that, it helps you attract the right employee, doesn't it?
It does. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And differentiate you, right? Because if you're, someone in accounting, and I know it is brutal to try and find people in the accounting industry,
Yeah.
right? There just aren't enough.
Yes.
So having such a fun brand and such a strong mission or target market about who you're helping, I would assume that would help you attract people. Does it? Do you feel like recruiting is easier?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if easier is probably the right word, but it
Yeah.
definitely makes us like more intentional, about like who we want to hire, so what are those specific qualities and skills, soft skills, hard skills, all of that related to it. I think it just gives us a direction, with like anything that's super important to have a direction to move towards or, shoot for. So when we do recruiting, we can base our questions, off of that and our requirements off of that. And that does simplify, I guess, would probably be because hiring is still like a process, right? Like,
Right.
but
Absolutely.
it does help simplify the process and make it clearer, and I
Mhm.
think that's super helpful in that. Mhm.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about your customer base
Yeah.
and your niche or your target, because a lot of
Mhm.
times, when I talk to companies, they have a very hard time saying this is our niche. This is where
Yeah.
we are going to really become an expert, because you don't want to say no to business,
Right.
or anyone out there, or feel like you missed something. But I love that you
Yeah.
serve a specific demographic, so especially
Mhm.
women and minority-owned small businesses. And you talk a lot about how they're underserved and undereducated when it comes to financials. So how has your brand helped you build trust with that audience? Because, it's something where, talking about financials, it's hard for people to do, right?
It
You
is.
you
Yeah.
either feel like you're doing great or you feel embarrassed at how you're doing and you're sharing that
Right.
with someone. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit how your brand helps you establish trust with your target market.
I think just having a name like Sidekick kind of already, lowers the defenses, if you will, because everybody knows what a sidekick is. We all know, like that's part of the superhero, universe, if you will, which a lot of people are, really into as
Yeah.
well, So I think it kind of lowers defenses, just the name by itself. I've gotten, lots of compliments or comments about the name since I switched to it as well. And I think that's a big reason why is like as an accounting firm, we stand out because most of the time it is based off of a name or like a series of letters, right?
Right.
So like they'll be different. And so like even just that I think makes us more approachable. But I think the other piece of it is just like having our brand visible, so like having our social media and having like the classes and the YouTube channel just kind of all bring it together makes us a lot more approachable. And then when we work with our clients, even just like in the prospecting conversations, a lot of times I will bring those elements into that conversation, so making them feel more comfortable. I like to share, some of the stories of clients we worked in the past with. So, like, one of the big things I always hear is like, oh, I should be a lot more organized, and I like to tell a story about one of our clients who's still a client now. We started working with her, though, I think probably about 6 years ago. And
Yeah.
when she came to us, she had like 6 years of taxes that we had to go back and do the bookkeeping for and then the taxes for. And she was like $1 million company, and that always kind of just like puts people at ease because I'm like, you're not the worst. This is kind of like the worst case scenario, and you're
Right.
nowhere near that. So like that just kind of like helps people to like, okay, this person understands me, this company can help support, my issue. And then, the other part of it too is like just helping people to feel safe about talking about it, is another big thing. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times people think they should be at certain levels depending on where their business is at. A lot of our clients are around like the 3 year mark, in their business, or a lot of times they're in the 6 figures or early 7 figures, so they've built a successful business by all accounts on the outside, but a
Yeah.
lot of times that chaos is happening in the inside. And so I think just kind of like helping, like you've already built something really successful, like let's just make these kind of tweaks to get you to an even better place so that we can build that success and sustainability, because that's really what we're looking to do with our clients is help them make it a long-term thing, or like a thing
Right.
like you mentioned that gets to being able to sell, like a big part of selling is like your business has to be secure, and it has to be sustainable without you, So how do we get
Right.
to that piece of it as well? And so I think just all of that together really helps people to open up because we can do our best work when we're on, a partner like a sidekick, when we're able to come into their world, and be able to help them make those adjustments and shifts to be a better business on their end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So let's build on that a little bit more and talk, since we're talking about your brand in action and, great branding delivers an emotional value, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so for you, it would be kind of, you want them to feel in control and
Yes.
cared for with their financials and all this. So what does it actually look like when a small business owner goes from feeling completely overwhelmed by their numbers to actually using them to making confident decisions? Like, what's the turning point where you are able to say to your clients, okay, we got to this point. I helped you get to this point as your sidekick, and now you can proceed forward making confident decisions. What, like, is there, balloons that go off within the
Yeah.
organization and things where you're like, yay, we've reached this point?
Yeah, I think the most transformation we see is when we help people put profit first in place in their business, which profit first is a cash flow management system or money management systems. It helps you to put your money into different buckets using different bank accounts that plans for like the year as a whole. So we use percentages to put into these different buckets, but it helps to stabilize your income and your cash flow. And I think the other big part of that people feel that where the balloons go up is it makes their money more tangible. So a lot of business owners have a really hard time looking at their financial reports, like your profit and loss and your balance sheet and your cash flow statement, and making sense of that to be
Yeah.
able to use that information to make better decisions. When you put a cash flow management system in place like Profit First, it kind of bridges that gap. So now you can see how your money works on a day to day and be able to think strategically about it. And then your reports just kind of act as that like tool to continue to like monitor, and so that's the biggest transformation we see when we come in. People usually are like, they're running on a month to month, cycle where they never feel like they have enough. They get a large tax bill that they were unprepared for. They feel like they can't strategically reinvest. They're
Yeah.
constantly needing more funding. So like adding debt, to their businesses. We come in, we set up the system, and it doesn't always solve that problem overnight. But I think the aha comes with now the business owners know why it's not working or what's not working so that we can start making those adjustments to
Yeah.
put them on a better path. And I think for a lot of people, that's what it comes down to is like they just don't know what to do or why things are happening. So being
Yeah.
able to give them those pieces of information and a little bit clearer really helps them to feel more empowered and supported and more in control because now they understand that why. And that's probably the biggest transformation and impact that we see when we work with clients.
No, that's excellent. So now, just out of curiosity, if there's any business owners listening right now, and I'm certainly listening about this, is, you're bringing in revenue and, but you also maybe feeling like you can barely keep your head above water. It just seems like, and you talked about cash flow and how all of that is important, but is there something that you tell your clients often, like, do this first? When it comes to like, really feeling like you're getting more, control over your financials or your cash flow and things like that, what's like the first thing to look at? And is it sales? Is it, you guys aren't positioning yourselves well? Or
Yeah.
is it something completely different that has to do with just expenses? So,
Yeah, I would say there's probably two things depending on where people are saying is bookkeeping. If you
okay.
don't have your bookkeeping together, you're missing out on a lot of information and data for yourself. And that's going to make it really hard to do anything else after that. So that's like
Right.
the first step. If people already have that in place, the next step that I always tell them to look at is their margins. Like when you have your pricing, is there a logic behind that? Like, are you making sure that your profit margins are high enough so that you're able to support the rest of your business, all of your overhead expenses? So taking a look at pricing is usually a big thing, especially if they've been, experiencing that where they have revenue coming in, but it just like never is enough. Like, let's look at where that money is going. Is that margin good enough? Or maybe we need to cut expenses. Maybe we need to raise our pricing. Maybe we need to improve that process. But starting there usually is a great way to kind of get that process going and get a little bit of clarity to make sure that part's working. Because
Yeah,
if you don't have good margins, then everything else is not going to work. So,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
You're just barely going to be breaking even, right?
yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's get back to branding for a second again.
Yes.
So, as a founder, you told me when we talked before this interview the first time is that, you use your brand as an operating framework to make company
Mhm.
decisions. That's not just
Yes.
marketing. So, did you do that intentionally? And maybe give me an example of how a business owner can use the brand as a framework to make operational decisions.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So I think initially, like when I had this concept of wanting to be out of the box, and a little bit, different from the typical accountant, I had no idea what branding was at that time. So let's put
Yep.
that out there.
Yep.
I didn't know what that was, but I did have kind of that inkling, and thought process behind it. But as I've grown, I've been in business for 12 years now. And as that's kind of evolved, it's become more obvious that branding kind of is that foundation to like what everything else that happens, so when we're clear about who we are and who we want to serve and how we want to serve them, that's when we are able to be intentional and to push things forward a lot faster, because then and say no to things too, so like we can
Right.
say yes and we can say no depending on what that looks like. And a lot of that comes from that branding, like who, and who we want to serve is become, a very intentional piece of it as well. Because, like you said, we could serve probably a bunch of different clients, but is that who we want to work with, or
Right.
does that align with our brand and who our target client is, as well? Because sometimes it's not. Like we work with regular people, I like to say, clients that are usually like 100,000 to like 4 million, in size. So they're not super huge companies. They're, companies that want to grow and be successful and sustainable, but they don't want to be the next Amazon. So a
Yeah.
lot of times those are different conversations than Amazon, like
Right. Right.
their team is going to look a little bit different than the teams that or the people that we serve and how our team looks for them. So that helps a lot in terms of like that marketing and that messaging and how we have our services set up and the conversations we have with our clients and what our deliverables look like. So it kind of impacts all of those different pieces
Sure.
when you have that part, clear. And then the no too is like now we know, when we have clients or prospects, we're like, no, that's not a good fit for us because that doesn't align with our brand and who we're trying to serve. So it
Yeah.
definitely makes a big difference. But
Yeah, to me, that's the biggest gift of using your
yeah.
brand as kind of like a lens to evaluate
Mm-hmm.
strategic decisions is the ability to
Yeah.
say no to things, right?
Right.
Because it's hard. We all have
It's
FOMO,
hard.
and it's like nobody wants to turn down a client
Yeah.
engagement, things like that. But as time goes on, I'm sure you've realized this too, that a lot of times just saying yes to things actually hurts you in the long run,
It does.
that
Yeah.
than, helping you with some immediate cash flow or, something like
Yeah.
that. So,
For
yeah,
sure.
no, I like how you use that and explain how the framework helps you. So, I also want to talk about something, as a professional service firm, you're 100% virtual, right, with your team,
We are.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yep.
on the wonderful side of that is you can serve anyone across the
Yes.
US, kind of a thing. But it also makes it hard sometimes to be consistent, right, with culture or even the brand experience. So what systems, rituals, communications, what have you done to make sure that the brand experience is not only communicated to all of these people that you are not sitting in a room with ever, but that they know what the brand experience is that you want to have delivered and how you monitor that. How do you do that? How do you explain the brand and the culture to a virtual team?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly, I feel like it's always like a work in progress too, because we're always like improving how that happens. But I think overall, some of the things that we do is we do have team meetings every day or
Hmm.
Monday through Thursday because we're technically closed on Friday. So Monday through Thursday, we have team meetings.
Yeah.
On Mondays and Thursdays, because we have some part-time team members, so they only come up to those two meetings, we do our values. So our values, we walk through them. Everybody takes a turn on one value. We say them all together. And then we have company meetings where we will talk about, how to demonstrate those values within our services. We do a lot of it really comes down to like a lot of intention, right? Like you really
Yeah.
got to be intentional about how you create a culture in any business, but especially when you're virtual. So another thing, like building in accountability. So how do we build in that accountability to make sure, our team members are following through, or if they're feeling a gap, how do we support them? So making sure that there's a lot of communication. Internal and external communication is one of our big values as an organization. So like we press that a lot. Like how can we be better communicators? How can we support our clients and communicate with them? We have, different templates. So we have like a meeting process or a
Mm.
meeting cadence, that our team members follow so that they're hitting the main points. That we also, encourage them to look for opportunities to build relationships. So, listening for people talking about their families, or if somebody's been sick or if they've been on vacation, so
Mm.
that on the next call, they can ask them about those things, or when they do the follow-up email. That just helps build that relationship, which is a
Yeah.
big, value of ours too. So just kind of thinking about some of those small things along the way. And then we do like a monthly, I guess, professional development call, you could say, with my team, where we talk about different things like that. So we've talked about everything from time management to better communication to, how, personal wellness, like all of these things that impact how we show up at work,
Yeah.
which ultimately impacts how, they show up for our clients as well. So all of those things, make a big difference and they really
Yeah.
matter. So just kind of, always working on looking at that. And I think with any area in business, you always have to kind of take some time to look at what's working versus what's not working. So if
Sure.
there hasn't been, if there's things that we've gotten feedback from clients on their team, on the team member they're working with, making sure that we're taking a look at like, okay, what was that a result of, what caused that, and then like making adjustments based off of that. So we do kind of that feedback loop process and constant communication, and then continually instilling the values, kind of a combination of all of those things. And then we do like team activities and things like that as well to build our internal relationships as a team, which are important too. So yeah, kind of a gist of all of that.
I love it. I am so excited and heartened. I give you an A plus in
Thank you.
you know, you
It's been a
absolutely
journey.
you absolutely could teach a master class in how the CEO or the founder has to be the steward of the brand,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got to walk the talk, but you also
Yes.
have to make sure that everyone's walking alongside you to deliver that
Yeah.
same brand experience. And I am so impressed by how you're able to put that together for your
Thank
team
you. Yeah,
and
it's
love
definitely been
everything
a
about
journey.
that. Yeah. So, yeah, kudos to you. Congratulations. So, well, now that I've just given you accolades on how amazing your business is, I want to just say before we move on to closing here, because we've used up our time, one of the things I like to do at the end of the show is to ask, people to nominate another small business that you think is doing a really good job with their branding. And I don't know if there's one there, you could think of, or
Okay.
do you think they just have great messaging, great personality? They're always consistent. But yeah, I like to give out shout outs for great branding.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm like trying to think of, we have a lot of really great clients. I guess the one that's coming top of mind would probably be one of our clients, 𝐂𝐻𝐢𝐬𝐿. She owns Floor Glow Services, which is a girls group home program. So she does a lot of work with underserved or underprivileged youth, and just works on helping them be better productive members of society, kind of working through different traumas. And she has built a brand that just really speaks to that. Like Glow Services is like, the glow up, if you will, is like, that's kind of the premise of it, is helping these girls really glow and get to this higher level. And her, just as a person, she just does a really great job branding herself.
Yeah.
She's always like, oh, I want to be more like 𝐂𝐻𝐿. So she would definitely be somebody that I would love to shout, or that I am shouting out, because she's done a great job with branding herself and her business and who she is and what she's trying to do in the communities that she serves, which is amazing. So
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. I can't wait to
yeah,
give that
absolutely.
shout out. Yeah. So, Megan, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your
Thank you.
journey and how you came up with your brand name, how you, like we said, act as the CEO, steward of the brand for your people, and then really use the brand as a framework to deliver a consistent, amazing experience for your clients. But if
Yeah.
there's any of our listeners out there who would like to learn more about Sidekick Accounting or you, where can they find you?
I am on all of the socials, so Facebook, and LinkedIn, Instagram mostly, and then you can connect with me there. I have a YouTube channel as well. And if you'd like to follow any of those, you can go to chatwithmeg.com. Meg is in Megan. That'll take you to my website where you can either book a consult or a networking call or follow me on all of those channels. So I'd love to connect with anybody that would like to.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. And we will have all of those links in the show notes for this episode. Before you go, Megan talked about using her brand as an operating framework, not just for marketing, but to make decisions about the right clients to work with. If you're like me, you've had a few customers over time that you didn't feel good about. You might have had some reservations before working with them, but you were just so excited about the money that you said yes to the project. But then it ended up not being a good fit for you or for the client, and you regretted saying yes. And maybe you were crushed by how hard it was to extricate yourself from the engagement, losing time, money, goodwill, and even enthusiasm for the business. Well, the reason for that is that there was a bad brand alignment. To avoid that, your exercise today is to use this brand alignment filter to make sure you are working with the right customers, those who value what you do, are profitable, and are loyal. So take your last 5 client inquiries or your last 5 yes decisions and run them through this 3 question filter. Does this client align with who you said you serve? And does it allow you to deliver the experience promised in your brand messaging? And would saying yes to this new customer engagement move you toward or away from the business that you're trying to build? If you answered no or away from any of these questions, it's a signal worth paying attention to. Your brand isn't just your logo or your messaging, it's your strategic decision-making system. It's a lens to evaluate growth opportunities. So start using it like one. Again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you
Yeah,
sharing your
thank you so
story
much.
with us.
Thank you. It was a fun conversation.
Excellent. Excellent. So, and thank all of you listeners for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed it, I'd love it if you could help me build a strong brand following for the show. Please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode.